full of guys that had trouble with the conditioning test, which, by the way, for anybody that wants to joke about that, the Browns' conditioning test is no joke. 20 sprints of 40, 50, or 60 yards, depending on your position, with 3-minute breaks in between, bro. I have nothing else to say after that, because that's a tough one there. But my thing is not the guys who passed it, like Terrence West. He failed the first one. I got a little worried. They crushed the second one. My worry is Phil Taylor got re-injured or injured, or however you want to look at it, trying to pass that conditioning test. That's a setback. I got to tell you that I think that Phil Taylor is going to be behind for the rest of training camp here with that. And the Browns giving a lack of information about him leads me to believe I'm dead on about that. But a couple of guys got hurt while trying to pass that conditioning test.
Yeah, and as far as Phil Taylor goes, that's not the way that I read it. I read that he was unable to pass the conditioning test because he was rehabbing a minor injury. I didn't catch the fact that the injury occurred during the first time.
No, but I believe he re-injured himself. I believe that he re-injured himself in the attempt to pass the conditioning. But you could be right. It could be, I read it as he re-injured himself because
the reason that he was on the non-football related injury list was because he was, I read, he excused from the conditioning test for the moment because he was rehabbing a minor injury.
Okay.
And you could be right. I maybe had misread that, but I was actually a little bit more concerned about Billy Wynn because the talk was that he had, torn a hamstring or something. Obviously, a much longer lasting thing and not an easy thing to come back from, and one that would put him behind the eight ball for weeks and maybe months as opposed to days from getting back in there. But I think you'll see these guys. And I also thought that maybe some of that might relate to roster numbers or moves that were guys that were on injury lists of various types where maybe there was a little bit of fudging going on there.
But I will say this about Phil Taylor. I know for a fact that he did try to take the conditioning test. He didn't just not take it because of the injury. And because Mike Pettin specifically was asked during the question and answer session whether he has reattempted to take his conditioning test. And that's what led me to the conclusion that he re-injured the previous injury there while he attempted to take it because of the fact that he was specifically asked, will Phil Taylor be retaking the conditioning test, which tells me that he already failed it the first time. But you could be right. But and Billy Wynn was the other one that I wanted to bring up because there were a couple of guys that it was said got hurt, some more seriously than others while taking that. And to me, I mean, whether you play for the Browns or not, I'm going to say the same thing I said about Marcel Darius, man. I get taking the offseason off. Not everybody trains at an Olympic level during the offseason. The good players do. But even the ones that don't, to not, even if it was 6 weeks out of camp, to not begin getting yourself in the basic shape that you're going to need to be in an NFL camp, that there's no excuse for that to me. And I just don't understand guys that do that. I'm not saying come in ready to be the MVP, but come in ready to go to work.
Yeah, and it's not like this conditioning test was sprung on people as a surprise.
Right.
Obviously it's the first camp under a new coach, et cetera. But still, you've got to believe that there's going to be those kinds of gassers being run and those kinds of wind sprints or whatever to get you where you need to be. And I guess maybe we'll reserve judgment until we find a little bit more about Taylor. You come in with a little tweak somewhere, and maybe you try to run these sprints, and after a quarter of them or half of them or three-quarters of them, you say, "Hey, coach, man, I can't do this. This thing is bugging me, and this hurts or that hurts, and it'd probably be better if I didn't finish this up. I'll give another shot next week or whatever." That may have been the case as opposed to an injury happening in the running of the sprints. But we'll see how that plays out. Maybe it's just a guy who would rather sit on the side and pedal the stationary bike and than beat his head in during summer camp. But you hate to see that kind of an attitude, but it's been known to happen at NFL camps where guys just kind of skate their way through, and if they can let a minor injury put them on the sidelines, they're willing to do that.
The old bike brigade. All right, hey, let's move to something. Here's some really this is one of my most encouraging things to report from over the weekend. And I think we saw it coming because you and I both talked about it. The competition at running back, brother. Now they're going to get. They already started. Obviously, this morning they practiced right before the show with the pads on. I didn't get a chance to go out there today, but it changes when pads go on, and they all of a sudden positions like the running game, you start to see some separation. But man, nothing but good things to say about West this weekend. He, in my opinion, he outshined Ben Tate. And this is shorts and no pads, and I get that, but man. Watch out now, because I think West is coming to claim that starting job. And you and I kind of thought he had a real shot to do it.
Yeah, that's true. And what I heard, and you were out there, were you out there Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah,
Jerry,
I checked out a little bit of both. Yeah, I checked out a little bit of both days.
Yeah, the word was that the thing that I read about was the catch in the ball, where he made a couple of one-handed catches on little wheel routes.
Yes, his receiving
and
skills.
Looked very good doing that. And you know, the obligatory article where someone approaches Ben Tate afterwards and says, hey, and Ben Tate said, well, it's a little bit early to be making those kinds of judgments, and when we get the pads on, it's all different.
Yep.
So he was saying all the things he's supposed to say when someone can, you know, ask him about being maybe behind already an untested rookie when he fancies himself one of the better running backs in the NFL. So yeah, if there's a good, healthy competition going there, all the better. And you know, we'll see when they start playing the games. But sure, you got to be happy with what you've heard about West, if for no other reason than he's shown he can catch the football out of the backfield.
Yeah, he caught a couple of nice ones. Coach was like, I had to check the card and make sure I had the right jersey number on this guy, because I was like, hey, wait a minute, who was that? But you know, and Ben Tate, in fact, I've got some of his quotes in front of me now. Exactly what you said. He was, hey, look, man, we're 2 days in. Football's played with pads on. And then later on, he was like, look, you don't make team in the first 2-3 days of camp. You make it later. Let's see what happens first. And it's not his first rodeo, obviously. I like Ben Tate. I just think I like this because he's either going to get, and you and I talked about it a bit last week, the chance to be the feature back that he's always wanted, or he's going to fit right back into the role that he excelled in Houston that got him to this position to get paid and get out there, which is being a second back. And I still think that the Browns aren't going to have a starter and a backup. They're going to have two starters, and it's going to be both of those guys. But I think by the end of the season, the focus is going to shift more west.
Well, you're right. And the other thing is, you better have not 2, but 3 or 4.
Oh, yeah.
That you're happy with and that are capable. And if Edwin Baker or Dion Lewis or whoever turns out to be that 3rd or 4th guy, trust me, that 3rd or 4th guy is going to get some carries before the season's over, because NFL running backs get dinged up like everybody else has at lunch.
I mean, look at last year. How many guys?
You're going to need 3 or 4 guys.
How many guys carried the ball last year for the Browns? I don't have the stats in front of me, but we could just go through. I'm sure it's a list of guys that got their opportunities there. So you're absolutely right. Wide receiver, another wide open position, another one that's hard to judge. And listen, I'll be the first one to admit that I'll be like right there with the fans when it comes to watching the wide receivers in training camp. I mean, that's one of the harder things. You can judge how they catch the ball. You can judge their hands and how they run their routes, but that's one of those you got to be playing another team type of things, because sometimes when guys have advantages because they know who they're playing against, or they know the little things and or whatever, or they're faster than a guy, but this is the same team. To me, when you see those guys on the field with other teams and you start to see who's got the separation speed and who doesn't, I think that's where you get a better regular season grasp of what we've got at wide receiver. But I do like early on seeing some of the chemistry that these guys are developing with both quarterbacks. Hawkins is doing a good job of not just practicing, but doing a good job of being kind of a leader amongst these guys, especially for a guy who's just come onto this team and he's trying to find his spot. But, you know, you've had Burleson and they're working Austin in. Alexander, who we've talked about, has looked good. They're high on Charles Johnson. A lot of activity and a lot of open competition here at the wide receiver in the first weekend.
Yeah, and I read some very encouraging things about not only Hawkins, who's been getting rave reviews
yes,
ever since they acquired him, but Austin. You know, said that he looks very good. And I don't know how much you were able to see during your time out there of Austin and Charles Johnson and Armstrong, but I think you've got three guys there, and throw Burleson in there as well. That teamed up with Cameron. You're going to have guys that you can throw the football to, and professional receivers. Armstrong's sort of been a little bit of a journeyman, injury problems. He's 31 years old, but he's got some size, and they say he catches everything thrown in his neighborhood. And early reviews on Miles Austin have been pretty positive. So I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing, and they say that were you able to see was Charles Johnson going with the ones or the twos, or was he full speed, or were they limiting him? Or
with the
what did you see from him?
With the receivers, they were doing a lot of mixing and matching with that group, which I like, and you're going to see that more throughout camp. But so, Charles Johnson, man, that's somebody that I keep going back to. Look at him, man. I mean, he's a prototypical wide receiver when you look at him. I mean, that's a matter of fact. The Browns even said over the weekend, was it Coach? No, I think it was Ray Farmer when he was talking. Said they almost drafted him. They almost drafted Charles Johnson. The Browns did, and he ended up going to Green Bay, and they got him off the practice squad or whatever. But yeah, I like him, and he's making the most of his opportunity. I'm telling you, Anthony Alexander, man. There's another guy, or not Alexander. I don't know why I just said that. Armstrong.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking of Derek Alexander, the old Browns wide receiver. I
don't know
what I was thinking of there. But anyways, Anthony Armstrong. That's another one that I got AA written down here on the notes. That's another one that I thought is done some things to stick out. I mean, that's somebody that a lot of people looked past, but man, he's got familiarity with this offense. But all of these guys, it is a completely different wide receiver group than the last couple of seasons. That is clear as day. You can see a difference. Guys, there's better route runners. There's some better speed, I think, in certain cases, and size as well. So I'm with it. I don't know where it's going to shake out, who's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, all of that, but I'm very encouraged by what we've seen. But again, these are guys in shorts. Let's see what's happening when linebackers are able to, put a little pop into you as you're going for the ball and stuff like that.
Yeah, true. I'm as concerned as anything about the offensive side, the offensive line on the right side. Are they going to go short? I understand that they had Garrett Gilkey in there, because they were holding out, I believe, Greco.
He had problems with the conditioning test, too.
Yeah, and the Gilkey was penciled in there as starting right guard, and Schwartz at tackle. But I'm very, very curious if you saw anything out of Reed Fragel. If they're, kind of curious as to what that second-team line looks like. You're pretty well set on that left side. I'm assuming they went with Bitonio at left guard. So it's Thomas, Bitonio, and Mack left to right. And then when you get to that right side, got a few more question marks. Schwartz, I'm assuming, unless someone knocks him out of that job, is going to be your right tackle. But what they do with that right guard, and if they decide to, there was talk of moving Schwartz inside. I don't know if any of that's going to happen, but I kind of have high hopes for my Buckeye boy Reed Fragel showing us something this summer that because he seems to me to be a kind of a prototypical right tackle in this league. 6'7", 310, and long arms, big frame, good feet. I just think I'd like to see something happen there, and I'm just curious if you're watching any future workouts, what you see from him.
I will focus more at specific times because when they break off into the various groups, I don't necessarily follow the offensive line every time. I mean, I watch some of the things they do as a group. But I can't go too individual now. That'll next weekend. Unfortunately, with the practice schedule, now that they're not doing at least previously they had done staggered times. They had different practice times. Some sessions would be earlier, some would be later. Unfortunately, now I could get out even if I had it out before the show. I'm only going to get to see, the stretching, the basic, first warm up, 45 minutes, an hour before I've got to head back and start getting ready for the show. So really during the week, it defeats the purpose for me to head out there.
Oh yeah, and we're impatient too.
But I'm saying I hate it.
We're not going to learn anything really till we
see
the football games, and those are going to be starting up right away. So I guess I heard somebody say yesterday that this past weekend, was the last weekend without football until February.
That's it.
And
I said that at the beginning of the show.
That's a very cool thing. You know, you want the summer, you enjoy the summer, but damn, we're ready for football season to start, and no one's more ready than me. I'm excited to see these guys play a game.
No, and I'm right there with you.